Welcome to the Joy Meets Pain podcast. I'm your host, Dorcas. As a psychotherapist who has worked with children, couples, individuals, and families for decades, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, my family is the worst, or I'm too embarrassed to talk about my family, or no family is like mine. Well, guess what, listeners? All families have ishness, foolishness, happiness, shadiness, loneliness, forgiveness, hopefulness, goodness, and the list goes on. If you come from a family and are trying to navigate your family relationships, then welcome. When I initially started the podcast, I wanted to focus on family, therapy, and food. So some of my episodes were centered around these three topics. Since then, I have dived into more family issues, as you will see and hear in upcoming episodes. Please keep in mind, I am not providing therapy or medical advice. And here's a heads up. Once in a while, I will curse. So if you're looking for a clean, no foul language kind of show, this is not it. Today, I am welcoming two handsome, kind, loving, amazing brothers, Adam and Warren. All right, so share with the listeners a little bit about your family background. I'm familiar with it, but they are not. So tell us aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever you'd like to share.
The family, although close-knit, it mentioned the Harpers. We also had, for a long time until recently, we had the Wilsons and Watsons, which were my mom's side of the family. There were a lot of them as well, and a lot of cousins. We're not in touch with most of them, and most of them have passed on. But we have that aspect of the family. We currently have a first cousin who's in our generation as well, Wesley. But in terms of our family's relationship, our parents have been married for more than 50 years at this point. I've never been married. My brother was married for more than a decade. And all of the relationships that we have are based on things that we think are normal, but we see a lack of in other people, like respect and kindness and politeness and decency, which to us is normal, run-of-the-mill, the way you're supposed to behave, but is apparently a rarity in this world.
Absolutely. And yes, I mean, hopefully we'll have time to jump in on that a little more. But as a family therapist, I do see a lot of what you're expressing. And while it is troubling, I think all families come with it just a deep history of intergenerational patterns and trauma and everything else that leads to how we behave as adults. And yes, because my training is in human systems, I am always attentive to family interactions and relationships. And when I first met the two of you, I was impressed by the love, the loyalty, the unbreakable bond you have. Tell us about your relationship.
We've lived in the same city off and on many times, starting, of course, in New York. We lived in the same city in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as in Washington, D.C. So we tend to have our getting along be a little bit stronger than most of the siblings that we see. Even my closest friends, they don't get along with their siblings as well as we do for the most part.
Well, and honestly speaking, it's rare that I come across siblings who get along as well as the two of you, which is why I had to reach out and ask you to be here, because this is not a common thing that I have encountered as a family therapist. So I think a lot of our listeners will just be impressed to hear about your relationship. So have you always been this close?
Yes, I believe we have. Yes. We've had to be each other's friend or support or there for each other, especially when we're in new cities and don't know anybody else. So, yeah, we've, I guess every experience we've had traveling with family or any of the rest of it, we tend to be together. So, yeah, we get along, we support each other. He's got something he needs help with, I'll go help. Yeah, he's my best friend, and that's the way it's been. for life.
Yeah. So the one thing I cannot remember is what's the age gap between the two of you? Adam, 2 years.
2 years.
Okay. So you're pretty close in age. When I think about my relationship with my sister, whom I'm very close to now, but it hasn't always been that way. And the age gap between us is 11 years. So when we were younger, I mean, we fought all the time, going to school, coming from school. We were fighting all the time. And to this day, in fact, she feels like I'm more of her mother than her sister at times. So it's great to hear that, you've been through thick and thin and you are still very close. All right. So what about disagreements? Have you had any and how did you resolve them? Adam, would you like to chime in?
Okay, so the disagreements that we've had, as my brother mentioned earlier, have been minor. There hasn't been anything like, there are people who have disagreements with family that are huge, like, they fight over inheritance, or they fight over one of them crashes the other one's car, or, things like, we don't have any of that stuff. And we don't have these huge periods of time where people don't talk to each other. I'd say the longest time frame that we've ever gone without speaking to each other is 30 days. And that wasn't by an intentional, we're not talking to each other. That was, we were both busy. We weren't living in the same city. We were both working. That had nothing to do with anything about us getting along. So we don't have any of those really big disagreements. I don't foresee any in our future either, because it's not how we operate.
Yeah. Yeah. Warren, would you like to add anything to that?
No, Adam pretty much covered
Yeah.
it. We had a disagreement. I can't even really remember any.
Yeah. Even in terms of friends, like I don't like your friends, or I don't like you hanging out with, so-and-so, or dating so-and-so, none of those disagreements.
No,
we have very different tastes in the women that we date, and we have very similar tastes and very different tastes in our friends.
Okay.
We have several mutual friendships because of Greg is probably the most notable, having been in our lives for more than 2.5 decades. And Michelle is another one, and that's about 2 decades. But we know, I would say, we probably know 15 to 25 of the same people. And there's a varying degree of how far those people go in and out of our lives, depending on how close we are. Some of those people have become closer to me. Some of them have been closer to him, but it kind of bounces back and forth. So it's hard to say that, this person's my friend, this person's your friend, when we really are just all a big group of friends.
Yeah. Okay. Sibling rivalry is a thing. It's a big thing. And I will actually have a whole episode just on that topic, because it's another one of those issues that shows up in therapy frequently. And Adam, like you mentioned, some issues range from inheritance to marriages, and your spouse is not a good person, and so she pulled you out of the family, and so these are things that come up often. So it's remarkable to see that the two of you have not dealt with that, or managed it well, I should say. All right, so let's jump into food. So where did your interest in food come from? Adam, you want to go?
Well, the answer is going to be the same for both of us. It's from Marsha, from Mom. Mom is the best cook either one of us has ever run into in any capacity, in any place ever in the world. And as a result of that, we learned to love both cooking and, trying all kinds of new places and things. Yeah. And then I think that probably led into us loving to travel and to try foods from all over the world. But both of us are proficient chefs, and our interest definitively came from Mom, because let's just say that Dad can cook some things, but there's no comparison. Like, Mom is unreal.
Yeah. And Warren, what are some of your earliest memories of being in the kitchen with Mom?
Chores. Most definitely chores.
Yeah.
Mom had a system. There were 2 of us, of course. You can see us both here. The General and KP. Based ideas, but the General did everything else besides kitchen. laundry, trash, all that stuff, cleaning up, vacuuming. And KP was helping mom with preparing the meals, setting the tables, clearing the tables, doing the dishes, making sure the kitchen was clean. And we both got proficient. Mom looked at us when we were young and said, women of the future are not going to cook for you, clean for you, darn your socks, sew your stuff. No, you're going to learn all that. And I'm so glad she did that. So glad. Going back to the previous question, the sibling rivalry, we tend to put that into friendly competition. Mm-hmm. We'll try to outdo each other in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. We'll try to make something, not the same dish better than the other one. Make something completely wow the other brother. And it's fun. It's a great game.
Impressive. So, Warren, you had mentioned some of your Sunday morning feasts at home. So could you please give us details? Who did what was on the menu?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Adam mentioned that Dad can cook some things. Well, for years, Dad would give Mom a break and get up and cook the big Sunday morning breakfast. And I remember many a time smelling the sausage and the bacon and going downstairs and Dad standing there reading the paper with one hand on the counter while stirring grits. And I'm talking about the fast-cooked grits. I'm talking stirring the grits with the other hand and, happy and saying good morning and all that. But Dad used to make a huge feast. Bunch of eggs, sausage, turkey sausage, all kinds of stuff. Just not so much. Oh, I guess, yeah, it was a huge meal. And it was wonderful because Mom got to sleep in and relax, and we all gathered. Family meals are very important in our household, and I believe should be.
Mm-hmm. In terms of having a family meal, that would be a much more prevalent situation. Mm-hmm. The last family meal that we had together outside of travel, as vaccination became a bigger deal, and as we were getting close to the time frame of my dad's birthday in December, my brother and I conspired, because I had to be up in New York to help my parents redo most of their technology, their new laptops, et cetera, et cetera. My brother and I conspired to have him meet us there. And so we all got together for lunch the day that my brother came up there. And so that was the most recent one. So like if when we're talking about the Sunday morning meals, I mean, that's a really long time ago, although it sounds very clear it sounds very new in our minds because we both have very clear memories. But I think one of the points my brother was going to go on to that meets the criteria of what you were going to say. My father made it very clear early on in his career to the law firm that he was with that his family meant more to him than his job, and that he needed to be at home to have dinner with his family, period. Wow. And so we knew Dad was going to be at home, the latest 8:00 train. We were going to all have dinner together no matter what. And that's what happened for our childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. And breakfast too. Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up an important point, which is part of my inspiration for doing this podcast, is I have recognized the value of food in connecting and keeping families together. And our family has been through a lot as well. But most of our memories revolve around eating and being together. And to this day, we're all spread out all over the world. But the one thing that always brings us back together is Mom's cooking, And so even recently, she was showing us a picture of our dining room because she's had the same house since I was 14. Same furniture, nothing much has changed. And just reliving those memories of being at the table and having that brunch and engaging conversations, nothing replaces that at all. So I appreciate you just also sharing what sacrifice your dad made to make sure that this was a priority for his family. All right. So, Adam, I have seen some of your culinary skills on social media. Do you have a favorite dish or recipe?
So, and my favorite is actually something that a lot of friends and family enjoy. And I actually received maybe the best compliment of my life in making it from my mom, who said that it was better than anything she could make, which blew my mind. I also don't believe that. But My tortellini Alfredo Primavera, I've had friends travel states to come and eat it.
Okay. Well, I will keep that in the back of my mind. And when I do get to enjoy Warren's stuffed burgers, maybe Adam's dish will be right there next to it.
Yes, it will be.
Awesome.
Oh, you'll be
Fantastic. And Warren, some of your favorite dishes. I know you love grilling. I know you love, grilling salmon. You have a fancy recipe for salmon that I haven't come across and I will try. But for the listeners, do you want to share?
Yeah, it's actually a pan saute thing. I take a piece of salmon, hopefully a big hunk, but with the skin on, scaled, of course. And in the bottom of the pan, I put a little bit of oil so the butter won't burn, and a little bit of bourbon. Yeah. And on top of the salmon, all cut fresh, minced, garlic, chives, sun-dried tomatoes, and ginger. And that's it. And it's, I usually serve that with a nice bright salad, something that's got a lot of flavors to it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some simple, like, buttery yellow rice.
Okay.
That makes for a meal that people are always like, wow. So I'd love to make.
I was over here giggling because the way in which my brother just described making his salmon is almost ingredient for ingredient exactly how I make my halibut.
Oh, it would be great on halibut, yeah.
Okay. So before we jump into therapy, are there any family gathering rituals that your family has kept up that you would like to enhance or that you would like to change?
I was going to let you do it.
So we have, in terms of family rituals, now, are we talking about ones that are also still revolving around meals or just in general?
Meals would be good, but you can add others as well. Since it is a family therapy food podcast, you are welcome to share other rituals as well.
Okay, in terms of food, we have a long-standing tradition called Double Chocolate Day. It's vitally important for the family, where the Harper motto is given the choice of two, take both.
I have heard that. Yes, I have heard that.
And so if, any dessert time can be declared Double Chocolate Day, in which instead of just having a chocolate brownie or having chocolate ice cream, one has both, but one adds chocolate syrup and chocolate chips and whatever else one can add that is chocolate to it. So it's an important tradition.
Okay. Any others, Warren? So as children and coming from a Zimbabwean background, I mean, there are many rituals that I despised. I won't get into it today, but when I look back, I think, okay, as an adult, I do not want to continue that. Are there any, Warren, that you think you have or not?
Oh, you can see one? I see the smile at him. You must be able to think. I'm not trying to think of. Go ahead.
So I'll give you one. My mom, because so much of our ritual lives have been around food, our mom decided that she didn't believe that children don't like liver and onions and that it was simply a factor of, television influencing kids and saying, no, liver and onions are gross. So she performed an experiment on her kids because we'd never had liver and onions. So she made liver and onions, and according to my dad, she makes that fabulously. I've never been a fan, but so she made liver and onions for us, and she didn't tell us what it was, which not really a surprise. We often didn't know what it was that we were about to have, but whatever it was usually smelled good and was going to be amazing. And, she kind of talked about what it was as the meal went on. But we both tried it, and we both, oh man, this is like, we tried to be as polite as we could, but she could tell we hated it. And we'd never done that before. And she was like, I guess it's true. Kids don't like liver and onions. She walked back in the kitchen and she brought us out chicken that she had also made in case this had gone awry. But it was evident that we didn't like that. And that, to this day, still remains the only thing my mom has ever made that I didn't like.
Same.
Okay, so you as well. Now that is...
I'd forgot.
Really? Yeah, I love liver and onions. And again, I think growing up we had to eat everything. There was nothing you could not say no to food. Whatever was on your plate, you had to eat it.
Yes,
Yeah.
us too.
Yeah. Oh,
That's why we were suffering. Like we were suffering. We were hurting because we were like, we're not going to break the rules, but man, this is awful.
oh goodness. Well, when you do make it to Zimbabwe, I encourage you to try the liver there. The meats, I mean, it's just a different experience, and when I talk bacon, I cannot, give it enough credit. I was there for Christmas and just got back, and I have not been able to eat the bacon here because it just does not compare, So there's something about the meat. I guess it's what's considered organic because it's the same with the bread. It's just good, wholesome, fresh bread, And liver, you might have to try Zimbabwean liver, but we'll see. So let's jump into therapy. So remember, we are not doing therapy. We're just having a conversation. So only share what you're comfortable talking about. So what are your thoughts about therapy, Adam?
I guess there's a lot of different views of what you consider to be therapy. So do you mean by that family therapy, individual therapy, marriage therapy, or do you mean all therapy?
All therapy.
First, I have to add that my godfather, Dick America, would say that everyone should be in therapy. Now, I don't particularly agree with that, but I don't disagree with it entirely either. I think that there is a place for therapy for some aspect of every person's existence, but one has to identify what that is. I also find that so much of therapy is based on trust that some people can build with someone who's essentially a stranger and some people can't. I've found that therapy has been less than useful in my existence for most of my life. I've had much greater success in terms of positive relationships and interactions with other people as a result of my friendships and close relationships than I have with therapists. No offense.
I completely understand. It makes a lot of sense. And I think you're bringing up an excellent point, which is when your relationships are working well, there is less of a need for therapy. And that's usually what brings people to therapy is conflict at work, family, in intimate relationships, parent-child relationships, childhood trauma, all of those things. And so, Adam, I think your point speaks to the power and importance of having amazing relationships. And when you nurture them and make an effort to maintain them, there is little need for therapy. Warren, what are your thoughts?
I've not seen therapy be unbeneficial to people. If they're talking to somebody, in a therapeutic manner. A lot of people want to keep that very private, and I get that too. You want to keep it private. But, well, as Adam mentioned, I was married for over a decade, and we went through marriage counseling both before the marriage and during. And it was extremely helpful to become aware of our own behaviors. Excuse me. And not be reactionary. I got along famously with my former wife. I say former because ex implies a negative relationship, and we're still friends. We've had more disagreements, I think, than I have with my brother. But we resolved it. I mean, we were able to talk through. We were able to not snap to any judgments or anger or emotion. It's really just a matter of communicating.
Yeah.
It really is. And the thing always helped with us breaking down our own barriers so that we could.
Yeah.
So it's been beneficial to me.
Absolutely. And thanks for mentioning that you went to therapy before marriage, because again, most people don't. And when they do come to couples therapy, things have taken a serious turn, and there are a lot of, factors that couples just don't consider before marriage until marriage. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, you're religious and I'm not. And, so it's amazing that most people don't consider premarital counseling. So if your family decided to seek family therapy, do you believe you all would be on board about what to work on?
I think I was saying that yes, if we perceived that there was an issue that needed to be talked about in therapy, then yes, I would be for it. I've not had a bad experience with therapy. I don't see it as something that's negative, but there's kind of stigma on it when you talk about it with people.
Yeah. And so you believe your family would be on the same page as far as these are the things we want to work through in therapy. Because again, that's a big issue for those who come to family therapy, is agreeing on what the problem is.
Well, given our good relationship already, I think we would all be open to the thing that any one of us suggests that would be helpful, as long as it seems like any.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're talking about. What do you think, bro?
I couldn't for the life of me at the moment envision my parents saying, I think as a family, we need to go to family therapy to resolve this issue, because I can't imagine what that issue is going to be.
Right.
Same here.
Right. And, this is why you're here, because your relationship, your family's relationship is just rare. This is not a common thing, and from my early days of being around you, I really got that sense that it's deep, it's just full of love, and I just was waiting for a day when I could have the honor of talking to you about your family. But yeah, I always just got the sense that there was something so different and special and meaningful about your relationship, which is why I wanted to have an episode on your brotherly bond. All right, and so I think we can probably wrap up at this point. It has been a pleasure. I'm confident listeners have gained a greater appreciation for a positive, brotherly relationship that's filled with laughter and fun and food. You truly are an inspiration. Any advice or tips you'd want to give for siblings who maybe are struggling to have the kind of relationship that you have?
After you, bro.
Communicate and try to do it without anger.
Yeah.
Okay. From my perspective, because I'm technologically inclined, sit down with your siblings, put your phones away, sit down and eat a meal together, and talk about the things that are in front of you as well as the things that are behind you. You're not going to make any progress if you don't talk about what you've been through, and you're not going to make any progress while you're staring at your phones. That's not what we're here for. We're here to interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. What more can I say, Adam? What more can I say? Don't post your business on social media either.
No, never ever do that.
Right. Yes, but we see it happen on a regular basis. So it's unfortunate, but I think your feedback is powerful, and I do hope listeners take notice and apply it to their lives, and that way their therapy process can be as smooth as possible, All right, thank you so much. It's been fantastic, and I look forward to enjoying those meals that you are planning ahead for me, right?
Yes, yeah. And you're welcome anytime for that.
All right.
For one or both of us.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be more than happy to cook for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I hope you found this episode informative and engaging. If you found it meaningful in some way and have comments to share, or you would like to share your family story, whether joyful or painful, please send an email to info@joymeetspain.com. Thank you for tuning in and for allowing me to spend this part of your day with you. Please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And of course, please spread the word. Till next time, stay well and stay present.